Woo-hoo.
On camera. Jacob, all yours.
Did everybody get a campaign card? Anybody not? Okay. Well, thank you all very much. It's great to be back here with the Cape Fear Libertarian Party. As I was driving up to the building, I got that deja vu feeling all over again. It's nice to be back here to share perspectives on liberty with you, as well as some perspectives on this race for the LP presidential nomination. When I joined the Libertarian Party in 1990 and served 3 terms on the National Platform Committee, I became convinced that it is the mission of this party to lead America to freedom, and in the process to garner a large number of votes. It will be my contention for the rest of this campaign, all the way through May, that the collective message of my opponents, all of them, for this nomination, cannot achieve either goal. Their message cannot lead America to freedom, and their message cannot garner a large number of votes. And that the only message that can achieve those 2 ends is a message that is based totally, strictly on genuine libertarian principles. And we know this to be true, that the standard message of LP presidential candidates cannot garner a large number of votes. We know that. 50 years after this party was established, what's the standard rejection rate among our presidential candidates, as well as our congressional candidates, where the issues are exactly the same? 98 to 99%. Joe Jorgensen just got, 98.9% rejection rate? It's really difficult to win an election when you've got a tsunami large rejection rate of 99% of the electorate. And I got a confession to make to y'all. I'm with them. I'm with the 98 to 99% who reject this message. I believe they're right, because it's a bad message, and it deserves to be rejected. And yet we continue to run presidential candidates with this same reform-oriented message time and time again. We do it over and over and over again, and we expect different results every time. Never changes. And the idea is, oh, well, they just don't know our message. If we can just get our message out, people will vote for this message. That's the notion. It's been the notion for the last 25 to 30 years. We just got to get our message out, Jacob. Everybody's a libertarian. Everybody's got a libertarian streak, right? Well, then how come they reject this message to the rate of 99%? That's a large percentage of rejection rate. And they do so because it's a bad message. And it's an especially bad message for this party. You see what it is? It's a message in a sense where LP presidential candidates are selling the political equivalent of a mud pie. That's what it is. It's a political mud pie that we're selling every 4 years. Now there's variations. There's some LP presidential candidates put a strawberry in it, and somebody puts a blueberry in it, and somebody wraps it up in ribbons, making it look really nice. And every 4 years, the electorate rejects this political mud pie. And I say they're right to do so. It needs to be rejected. Let me just bring up 2 issues that are facing our country to demonstrate what I'm saying. Now, there's a lot of issues in this race and that are facing this country, but let's just deal with 2. Social Security and immigration. Social Security is the crown jewel of American socialism. They don't call it Social Security for nothing. It's a classic socialist program. It originated among German socialists. It was imported into the United States during the New Deal administration of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who transformed America's way of life to a welfare state, and it became a permanent part of American life. It is based on the classic Marxian principle of using the state to take money from people who have the money, the working people, the young people, and giving it to seniors. It's based on supposed care and compassion. Where is the care and compassion of the Internal Revenue Service? Where is the care and compassion of a faceless bureaucrat from the Social Security Administration? Not only is this program a major factor in the out-of-control spending, debt, and inflation, the monetary debauchery that has taken our country down from within, the worst part of this is the sense of hopeless dependency that it has produced within the American people, including LP presidential candidates, who themselves claim that we need to continue this program. Oh, they may criticize it, but when the push comes to shove, oh, Jacob, we can't pull the rug out from under these people. We have to continue caring for them. Because that's what care and compassion is, this collective process through the Internal Revenue Service and the Social Security Administration. Let me give you an idea of how this political mud pie is sold by LP presidential candidates, all of whom support this socialist program in one way or another. Let's assume that lightning strikes and the LP presidential candidate, the standard one, gets into the presidential debates. Okay? That's what we always say, right? Oh, if only we got in the debates, Jacob, if only we'd gotten into the debates, it wouldn't have been 99%. Oh, our vote totals would have gone up, and I say nonsense to that. Wouldn't have made a dime's worth of difference. Why would people buy a political mud pie just because you're promoting the political mud pie in the debates? And this is how it would go. This is how it would unfold. You got debate stage, Trump, Biden. They're asked, where do you stand on Social Security? Oh, we got to preserve it for the seniors. It's the right thing to do. Mr. or Ms. Libertarian, what's your position? Oh, I want to make it clear that we libertarians, when it comes to Social Security, are right on the same page as former President Trump and President Biden here, Democrats and Republicans. We also believe that this program needs to be continued. Now, I got a plan. I'm a libertarian. My plan is called the opt-out plan, or the phase-out plan, or the gradualism plan, or the annuity plan. But by golly, I'm going to make this socialist system work. Because the duopoly doesn't know how to work. It's the duopoly that's the problem. It's that partisanship in Washington. But by golly, we libertarians are going to make this system work. And so I want to make it clear that we libertarians favor freedom and free enterprise. And we favor socialism too. We're going to make it all work together. Who's going to vote for that message? I wouldn't vote for that message. It's riddled through with contradictions, but you know what the worst part of it is? It shows no faith in freedom whatsoever. I say socialism has proven to be the bane of mankind. It's the worst thing one of the worst things that ever came about in humanity, this philosophy. And I say when you're dealing with a cancer, get rid of it, eradicate it. I would abolish Social Security today, and that is my position. Today. What do my opponents say? Oh, no, Jacob. Oh, they put their money in. Nobody's put their money into this program. It's not a retirement account. It's a welfare state program. It has been since the beginning. People pay taxes to fund the welfare state. Food stamps, education grants, farm subsidies, foreign aid, Social Security, Medicare, it's all the same. But here's the worst part of this message that LP presidential candidates put out, the standard ones. You can't trust freedom. You see, they say, Jacob, if you abolish Social Security today, there'd be people dying in the streets tomorrow. Really? Now, how are you going to sell a philosophy of freedom, claiming that freedom works, when you're here saying it doesn't work? There's no doubt in my mind that if you abolish this program today, which is what we should do, and we should be making the case to do, along with Medicare and all the rest of the socialist programs, nobody would be dying in the streets. Nobody. And to suggest that they would shows a lack of faith in freedom, a belief that freedom doesn't work. You've got children that would respond immediately to the needs of parents and grandparents on a voluntary basis. We just have to restore that faith in freedom. And it's a gratifying experience when children are faced with that choice of helping out parents and grandparents that really need it. When you reach that point in your life you will find it's a very rewarding and gratifying experience to go back and help the people that gave you so much, as compared to relying on the state to do it. Church groups. You'll never convince me that people that are filling the churches of America are going to stand aside from people that really need help when Social Security is abolished. There's a lot of wealthy Social Security recipients that don't even need the money. There's some that might have to go back to work. There is nothing wrong with going back to work as a senior. Keeps people young. And for the truly needy, you'll never convince me the people that are filling the churches of America would not be willing to come forward today on the repeal of this socialist program. And then there's the charitable groups, and there's the foundations. There would be the foundations for the former Social Security recipients that would pop up immediately that wealthy people and middle-class people would be funding. Because that's what America's all about. Not the coercive apparatus of this socialist program. It's even worse with immigration. Because immigration demonstrates the point I'm making even better. Now, there's people in this party. They've already said that they're hoping that this issue doesn't surface, that it isn't going to play a prominent role in this candidacy for this party's nomination. I got news for them. Their hopes are going to be dashed. Because when a program is producing deaths of innocent people, it deserves to zoom up to the top of priorities. And if any debate moderator, starting in November in South Carolina, tries to avoid this issue in order to help the candidates that are supporters of this immigration control system, they are shirking their responsibility to this party and to this nation. This immigration control system is part of the death machine under which we live, the federal death machine. Martin Luther King, some 30 years ago or so, during the Vietnam War, said that this is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. That's our government. The greatest purveyor of violence in the world. Imagine that. And nobody can deny that. I mean, we don't know how many people the federal government has killed in the last, say, 70 years, but it numbers in the millions. There's no question about that. That's nothing to scoff at. We are number one when it comes to killing. Invasions, occupations, state-sponsored assassinations, coups, sanctions, including the sanctions that killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children. And U.S. officials said those deaths were worth it. The drug war. And then America's system of immigration controls. That has resulted in the deaths of thousands upon thousands of penniless immigrants that are just searching to save their lives, the lives of their children, the lives of their families, or just to improve their lives. Dying and drowning in the Rio Grande, or dying of thirst crossing a lonely desert in the Southwest, or dying of asphyxiation in the back of some tractor trailer, or dying from some bullet fired into their abdomen by a soldier or by a Border Patrol agent. And you know what it's all about? It's about socialism. Because you see, what we don't want to confront in this country is that this also is a socialist program. Immigration controls. They're a socialist program. They're based on the socialist principle of central planning. You have a government entity that is planning in a top-down, command and control fashion, as compared to a free market and the spontaneity of a free market, planning the movements of countless millions of people in one of the most complex labor markets in history. It can't be done. Friedrich Hayek, the Nobel Prize-winning libertarian economist, said this reflects the fatal conceit of the planner, who thinks he's going to be able to do this without a crisis. Ludwig von Mises said the results of central planning are planned chaos. What better term could you have for what exists on the border and has existed for decades? I grew up on the border. I grew up on a farm on the Rio Grande. We irrigated out of the river to irrigate our farms, our crops. We hired illegal immigrants. They lived with us there on the farm. They're the hardest working people I've ever seen. I have lived almost half my life on the border. And I have seen this perpetual crisis all my life. It never goes away. It has never gone away. And there's a simple reason for that, because the crisis that exists on the border is rooted in this socialist system. This is what socialism produces. It produces perpetual crisis, chaos, death, and suffering. But it does more than that. It does more than it does with Social Security. Because with immigration, it produces a police state. An immigration police state. I've lived under that immigration police state. You've got Border Patrol agents that are able to enter into farms and ranches and searches within 100 miles of the border without a warrant. Just enter onto people's property without a warrant to search. They entered onto our farm. They would look for our workers so they could bust them. Like that was really going to win the war on immigrants, to bust our workers on our farm. If we put a lock on the gate, they'd shoot it off. This is what living under a police state is like. Warrantless searches whenever they want. They have highway checkpoints along the border. These are on the highway. You don't even have to travel into Mexico, ever. They stop you on the highway on these checkpoints. And they search your vehicle. They'll have dogs sometimes around there. That's how Willie Nelson got arrested for marijuana. One of these fixed highway checkpoints. That's what exists in totalitarian countries. They have roving Border Patrol checkpoints where they just stop any car at random. Hey, pull over. No broken tail light, no speeding, just pull over. They turn on their little light in their pea green vehicles. Open your trunk. I was the victim of one of these in high school. They've got misdemeanors, felonies for harboring illegal immigrants, transporting illegal immigrants, hiring illegal immigrants, and none of it has ever worked, and none of it will ever work. They built Trump's Berlin Wall there. What good did it do? The crisis is worse than ever. And now Biden has said that he's going to expand Trump's wall after he said that it was never going to do any good. He should have stuck with his initial position. Now, let's go back to our hypothetical presidential debate where our standard libertarian presidential candidate, all of whom in this race take the standard position that has been the position of LP presidential candidates for the last 25, 30 years minimum, supporting the system of immigration controls. Let's go back to that debate. Mr. Biden, Mr. Trump, what's your position on immigration? Oh, got to secure the borders. Got to secure the borders. Put me in office or keep me in office, I'm going to secure the borders. Okay? Ridiculous. Okay? Mr. or Ms. Libertarian, what's your position on immigration? Oh, I'm a libertarian. I want everyone to know that when it comes to immigration, I'm on the same page as these Democrats and Republicans. We're all in this together. We got to secure the border. But I got a plan. Just like on Social Security, I got a plan. You see, it's the duopoly that hasn't worked. That's the problem. Oh, the partisanship in Washington. Oh, no, we libertarians are going to make this system work. We're going to end the quota system. We're going to reform this thing. We're going to get maybe some soldiers down there on the border, but we're going to make it work. Because we libertarians believe in freedom and free enterprise and immigration socialism and this immigration police state, and we're going to make it all work. Who's going to vote for that message? How can it surprise anybody when there's a 99% rejection rate? I'm with the 99%. I reject it too now. Make no mistake, I will vote Libertarian. Always will. Voted for Joe. Voted for Gary. I'll vote for any Libertarian on the ballot to get our numbers up. But if you face me with their choice, with their message, which I consider a political mud pie, I'm going to reject the message. I would vote against the message every day of the week. Now, there's a major libertarian podcaster that recently said on a podcast that an advocate of open borders that's running for president in this party cannot garner a large number of votes. Now that's rich, because what we do know is that an advocate of government-controlled borders cannot garner a large number of votes, and that's reflected by this 98 to 99% rejection rate. Okay? We know that cannot garner a large number of votes, period. Now, what about the other way around? What about the advocate of open borders? Can I garner a large number of votes with this position? Well, 3 years ago, as some of you know, I ran for this party's nomination. And what was really interesting, I knew what I was up against. I knew there were people that were saying, if we nominate Jacob with these pure libertarian positions, open borders, abolish Medicare, abolish Medicaid, dismantle the welfare state, dismantle public schooling, legalize all drugs, dismantle the national security state, he's going to set us back. He's going to set us back. Now, I was really bemused by this position because what they're really saying is that libertarian principles are a negative. They're a liability. Because they never attack me for violating libertarian principles. They attack me for adhering to libertarian principles. And what they're saying is, this is a negative. This is a liability. Open borders is a liability. It's going to cost us votes. Abolishing Medicare immediately is going to cost us votes. Now, the reason I was bemused by this is I thought, well, this is really weird. I mean, I'd been away from the party a long time, and I thought, this is really weird. Why do people join a party if they're not excited about the principles? If you think the party principles are a liability, why join the party? Why not go to a party where you've got your principles there you can get excited about? And I do get excited about our principles. I love our principles. I've said ever since I joined the party, our principles are our greatest asset. These are the weapons that we should be going into battle with. So last time around, I knew what I was up against, so I said, okay, can this message garner votes? I said, let's go at it in the presidential primaries. We qualified for 9 presidential primaries last time around. And most of the candidates were in the primaries, and we campaigned. I campaigned heavily right here in North Carolina, and a lot of you know that. I spent a lot of time in North Carolina because I wanted to win this primary. At the end of it, I won 7 out of 9 presidential primaries and came in second in the 8th. Not because I'm any great guy, because I'm not, and because nobody knows me anyway, like in here in North Carolina. Because they like the message. Because they like the message. I wanted to prove that this is a vote getter, that our principles are our asset. They're not a liability. They're not a negative. Now, what did this podcaster say about this? Because I don't think any presidential candidate in this party has ever accomplished that. 7 out of 9 presidential primaries. And these are real elections. These are not inside the cocoon of a Libertarian Party convention where there's 75 to 100 people. These are real elections where people are going to the polls on election day and voting. What did this podcaster say about that? He didn't mention it. He didn't confirm it. All he says is, oh, an open borders advocate can't garner votes. Really? Then how do you explain I won 7 out of 9 primaries? You see, because he's airbrushed it out of his mind because it goes against the narrative that he's conjured up in his imagination. Was this a fluke? Well, not exactly. 20 years ago, I ran for U.S. Senate in Virginia. Ran against, I think, the most popular governor in the history of the state, John Warner. He had been married to the famous actress Elizabeth Taylor. He was chairman of the Armed Services Committee. This was right after the 9/11 attacks. This is 2002. I was saying that the driving, motivating force behind those attacks was U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. Same thing that Ron Paul would say several years later in that famous debate with Giuliani and the other Republicans. That was not a popular position in 2002. And I knew that I would not get one Republican vote. I didn't care. See, because I don't take the same position as these reform-oriented, standard libertarian presidential candidates that talk about their fantasy of getting the Ron Paul voters. They've never let go of that fantasy, that all the millions of people in the Republican Party that surface for Ron Paul are going to suddenly come over and support us, or our presidential candidate. Nonsense. Never going to happen, never has happened. It's a dead-end political strategy. I didn't target Republicans like they do. The Democrats didn't run anybody. They knew they couldn't beat Warner. I knew I wouldn't get any Democrat protest votes. I'm calling for the repeal of Medicare, Social Security, the whole welfare state. What Democrat's going to vote for me? I didn't care. LaRouche ran, and she got undoubtedly all the Democrat presidential protest votes. At the end of the process, I got 7% of the statewide vote. On a bare bones campaign, I had no money to spend on this campaign. And that amounted to about 106,000 people that took the time to come out and vote for my message. Not for me, nobody knew me. For vote for my message, including open borders, abolish Social Security, abolish Medicare. One of my proudest accomplishments in that race is I got endorsed by a black minister, one of the most prominent black ministers in the country, a man named John O. Peterson, the minister for the Alfred Street Baptist Church in Alexandria, Virginia. He later got elected to the African American Hall of Fame. I went and met with him, told him where I stood on all the issues. Didn't hold back. He says, Mr. Hornberger, I'm going to endorse you. And he wrote me a letter of endorsement. He says, take this to every black minister in the state. You tell him I'm endorsing you. He knew I couldn't win. And I have no doubts that a large number of those 106,000 votes came from black voters. And those of you who were with me at Wilmington three years ago, when we went into those black neighborhoods, that you guys organized right here, the Cape Fear Libertarian Party organized that vote getting, you know the reaction we got from those black people in those neighborhoods. I have never seen anything like it in all my life. The positive, euphoric, excited reaction to what we were standing for. You will never get that kind of reaction from white middle-class people or well-to-do white people. I have long said that this is a big block of votes for us, black voters, because they know that we have had this fierce opposition to the drug war, which has fallen disproportionately on black people. There is a block of votes out there among people who don't vote. That's like sometimes 50% of the electorate. Why aren't they voting? Because they know the system sucks, the whole system. But they're not going to take the time to go vote for any reform-oriented candidate that's running for president on behalf of this party. Because a reform candidate that's going to be calling for reform, monetary reform, criminal justice reform, drug war reform, Social Security reform, Medicare reform, educational reform, school vouchers, school choice, and any reform the Pentagon, reform the CIA, reform this, reform that, they're not going to move. But you get a candidate out there that is waging a campaign of pure libertarian principles, which is communicating to them, this whole system sucks, and I'm with you on that. That force will begin to move. And it will begin to shake until it becomes of earthquake proportions. And if you can get that earthquake to start moving among 50% of the electorate, this party's going somewhere, and so is this presidential campaign. I say it's time to do something different in this party, because doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is going to get us nowhere, except a 98 to 99% rejection rate. I say it's time that we do something different, something bold, and that simply means running a campaign based on our principles, where we fight as who we are. We fight as libertarians, not as Republican lights, not as welfare warfare state reformers. And where we go into battle against these Democrats and Republicans with our assets, our swords, and our shields, which are our principles. I say we light a freedom fire within the hearts and minds of the American people. I say we take their immigration control system and cram it down their throats. I say we take their Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, welfare state system and cram it down their throats. I say we take their drug war, this malevolent, vicious, deadly, destructive government program, and cram it down their throats. I say we take their regulatory system, including their COVID system, and cram it down their throats. I say we take their national security state system and their forever wars, where they've gotten us precariously close to another nuclear war like they did in 1962, and cram it down their throats. I say we lead America to freedom. Thank you very much.
Elizabeth, if anyone has any questions for Jacob? Thank you very much. Awesome.